Imagine yourself in a doctor's office. You're over 400 pounds. You don't know how you got there. And you hear your doctor, who's supposed to be helping you, dictate into a microphone that's talking to his laptop that the patient is more abundantly obese. That was my predicament. This is Ryan. This is a high carb regenerator. Welcome to my channel. So last week, I think it was, somebody asked me to discuss the diets that I've been are done, which ones I liked, which ones I didn't like, which ones were effective, which ones weren't effective. They just you've been making these, nonsense videos. Why don't you get back on point? I took their hint and I took the liberty. I did write some notes. You're welcome. To those of you who don't like hearing me ramble on, I will try to keep this as ramble free as possible. I've done this now 3 times. We're going to try. This could be it. This could be it. We could make it this time. So I wrote from 95 to 99. I was doing a CECO, a calorie in, calorie out, high protein. Fat doesn't really matter. Carbs are bad. Now, as far as what I weighed, I never really kept track of it. I had no interest in competing, and I fit in my clothes. That was basically where I kind of kept things. If I started stretching my clothes out, then I'm like, all right, something's going on. So CECO, high protein, if I can find the picture, I don't know if I have it. If I can find the picture, I'll put a picture here of what I look like. And I think this was 97 or 98, somewhere in that range. I was maybe 15 pounds over, where I should have been. All right. So, but then I got this bright idea. I'm like, all right, things are going good. Things are going good. Let's go extreme. Let's see what we can do with this. So from 99 to 09, instead of just going out into the world and actually like reading books, because the internet really was the crap back then, like going to the library and trying to find books. Maybe I would have come across McDougall or somebody like that, or a raw fooder. Instead of doing that, I followed the magazine's advice that had already failed me in the first place. Like it was going to sway me in the right direction. So I did basically keto. Now, I don't know if it was called keto back then. Atkins was a really big thing. Basically eating bacon, high-fat meat, and grapefruit juice is all I remember for Atkins. I really never did Atkins. I did it for a week. I hated it. I'm like, I don't know why anybody would do this. So I did basically keto. And what was my diet? I worked at a food distribution plant, but I did keto. And my version of keto was I worked in a fish distribution plant. I had access to the highest grade fish that you could possibly buy. So and usually I got it for free. So it was mainly fish. The fish that I ate mainly was sea bass, tuna, and salmon. Of those 3, salmon was definitely the most eaten. And then I would have cauliflower, sometimes green beans, sometimes broccoli, sometimes all 3 of them. And every Sunday, I would allow myself to have a sweet potato, 1 sweet potato, just the traditional orange sweet potatoes, and that's all I would have. I continued that on from, I think it was about this time of year, so it was about October or November, somewhere in there, and I also paired it with walking an hour a day. So I don't know which one was more effective, but I paired it with walking an hour a day. I dedicated myself to this, and when I got to summer the next year, and we were, I lived on the beach, and we got to the beach season the next year, I took my shirt off, and my friend's like, "What the hell happened to you?" And I'm like, What? He's like, you're like half of what you used to be. I'm like, oh yeah, I've been doing this whatever, and I've been walking every day. He's like, well, it's working. And during this time, there's a theme in this. During this time, because I was walking so much, I had always had a foot problem with my left foot. I don't want to go into this video either, but it was very painful for me to do it. I had to force myself, on top of the fact that I had a standing only job. I was going to high school full time, so I wasn't lifting at all. I quit lifting, and the weight came off. By 2001, I had started escalating the weight that I had gained. I hadn't been doing the walking anymore because my feet really couldn't handle it. Come around 2001, I was lethargic all day long. I was like, I couldn't wake up. I couldn't I couldn't even sleep either. And this is one of the things that you find with keto is eventually pretty close into or soon into it, you start having issues sleeping and you start having issues with your breath. And that's one thing that I noticed continuously with keto. So I found this doctor. He was a bodybuilding doctor. He was like, "Why are you doing this keto thing?" He was more into like a zone type diet or even a higher carb than that. And he's like, this is probably, doing something. You really should come off this keto. And I'm like, oh no, the magazines are smarter than you. So I'm like, whatever. So he did send me for a bunch of blood tests, and he found that my testosterone was very low, and he wanted to put me on, like a calorie type thing because he was really big into that. He was a bodybuilder. Actually, attached to his practice was his own gym, like that he, used for physical therapy. You couldn't actually join this gym, but if you were a part of his physical therapy, then you could use it. So I went in there and they put this mask type oxygen thing on there to measure my like VO2 max or whatever. And I think there was a band on my arm, like maybe a band on my forehead. And they tested how many calories that they thought that I would burn and, need to take in. So the number that they had come up with was between 3,200 and 3,600 was my basal metabolic expenditure, basically. So that didn't take into account working. That didn't take into account lifting. That just was to run this machine that I operate. And I did it. And I gained weight. But how much weight? I don't know. It wasn't that much weight, but it started freaking me out. So I went back on keto because I'm like, oh, I don't trust this. I didn't know at the time that it was probably my glycogen stores refilling and it was me actually getting healthier again. I freaked out. I'm like, oh, I need the swimsuit body or whatever. Nobody's gonna date. Even meanwhile, I had a woman, but like, she's gonna, not want to be with me. I'm fat, whatever. So I had that going on my head. So I went back on keto. So keto, I went back on keto again. I don't know exactly when this happened. It was probably around 2002, 2003. I went back on keto. It somewhat worked. So some of that weight, which was probably glycogen stores that I had gained on this doctor's plan, had come off. And it was probably just me poisoning myself with keto. It stopped working. So I went on a total binge. To anybody who's been on keto, you're eventually going to hit a binge. I don't care who you are or whatever. You're going to hit a binge. And I did. And that same plant that I was getting the fish from that I worked at, we started renting out space to the Cheesecake Factory. Their cheesecakes are amazing. And so if one just happened to fall off the freezer rack and hit the ground, we'd be like, oh, there's a sample. And we would just write it up as a sample. This one fell off, their newest and greatest one, and we would try it out. And it got to the point where I was damn near finishing half a cheesecake by myself in each slice, which is like 12 to 2,200 calories a piece. So weight gain was pretty significant. And I'm like, I can't keep doing this. And one of the things I have to say about, so from this 99 into 2001, I started getting a lot of flack at work. A lot of flack at work because I worked with this heavy Italian family, heavy as in girth and heavy as in everything. And they're like, you're just getting way too skinny. They were trying to fat shame, like reverse fat shame me. And they kept on like, well, we got a new cheesecake. I mean, it was really getting bad. So they were like force feeding me these cheesecakes. And I did gain a lot of the weight back. Or actually, I gained more weight than I weighed in the first place. This was all psychological, people. This was all psychological. If I can find this picture of my own issues that I had back in the day. It was psychological, and unfortunately it had snowballed into the point where I was at that doctor's office getting told that I was 405 pounds and more abundantly obese. I'm like, I can't keep this binge up. The keto, it worked for me in 99, but I didn't ever think like the walking part. Like I never did the walking part again. I only did the walking part from 99 into like 2000 something, 2000 something. I don't know. It was in the year 2000. It was another thing on SNL. So I went on keto again. It absolutely did not work this time. This was the absolute downfall of everything. I started at this time. I had always had the almost smell of ammonia, but this time I felt smelled like full-time Windex. It was ridiculous. I was throwing up stomach acid. I never could sleep. I started balding a little bit up here. What else did I have? I think that was the main symptoms that I had, but I felt terrible. I had bags under my eyes all the time. I was started looking a little bit older. And that is actually right around when I met Sandy. Was at this time I had been divorced and I was going through that, and I started drinking pretty heavily. This was when I was around 29. I started drinking pretty heavily because I was really depressed. I'm like, why am I putting this much effort into it? I started questioning why I was even going to the gym anymore. I'm like, I have no real reason to be lifting this amount of weight, and now I'm carrying around all this extra weight because I'm lifting all this extra weight. So then it got even worse. I went into started eating lasagna, the pre-made lasagnas and Oreos, and drinking, and I was sneaking beer into work, and it was just a hot mess. And I remembered, now Sandy at that time, who was my ex, was really into vegetarian, and so I kind of had that planted into my head, and because she was like borderline anorexic. And I'm like, well, yeah. And it looked ridiculous. I'm like this 405-pound guy, and she's like, I mean, you could see her ribs. And I'm like, what the hell? I got to do something. So I started taking that into account, and I started remembering back when I was actually in shape and I was actually coaching people, I actually got certified to be a nutrition coach because you had to do new credits every other year or something like that to keep your accreditation for coaching. And I remembered that because it was my coaching thing was ISSA. It was out of California, and they had mentioned the vegan in the book. So I started looking up vegan. YouTube was just coming on the scene. And I found a couple of vegan guys. And at this time, I was at a banking job. And the banking job, my particular location was in the like mega rich burbs, like Mainline. If anybody knows Philly, Mainline. It was like the average house was like $4 or $5 million. It was crazy. But on average, like once a week, I had to go down to Philly to do training, and the closest station that I could use was this Lansdale, and there was this guy Arnold over Arnold's Way, and he was always there handing out these green smoothies. And one day he approaches me and he's like, "You're fat. You're like, you're really fat." And he's like, "I can help you." And he handed me a green juice or a green smoothie, and it kind of planted the seed. But 2010, I still continued on with the downfall. It was really getting bad. Work started really questioning whether they should keep me or not. They finally found a reason to get rid of me. And I'm like, you know what? I can't keep on like this. I just can't keep on like this. So I started looking into vegan. And I started one meal a day. That was, I don't know why. I'm like, I saw this Gabriel Cousins guy. I'm like, oh, he must know what he's talking about. He's like a skeleton. He can barely move. That must be the best method to go. And I'm not making fun of the guy, but like, I don't want to look like that at all. So I'm like, I don't know why I took his example. So I didn't have a juicer at the time. I went to Sherwin-Williams and I got a paint thinner bag, and I had this cheap blender that wasn't even mine. It was hers. And I'm blending this like broccoli and kale and everything, and I'm putting it in the paint strainer, and I'm straining out the pulp, and I'm drinking that juice. I only did it once a day, but I was losing weight like crazy. Talk about hardcore Seco. And then because I didn't have a job and she's female, and for whatever reason, females aren't allowed to, sign a lease, so the male in the house isn't working. We lost our house, and we couldn't find the lease. So we were homeless for a little while. So I went on the Domino pizza diet for a while, and I gained all that weight back, and I think I got over the 405 that it originally was. 2011 hits. I got a good job at a furniture manufacturer, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go cold turkey. I'm going to straight up... sorry. For a little while, I was doing still dairy because I got addicted to dairy. And I was doing dairy for a little while. And then the month that I kicked dairy, I lost about 46 pounds in 1 month. Everybody's like, that's bullshit. I'm like, it was terrifying. I thought I had like done some permanent damage or something like that. I was terrified. And then it just stopped. But the stuff that was coming out of me, like parasites, worms, just stuff that was coming out of me. And that's when my journey into raw vegan started. I was probably about 375. I legit probably got to 425 by the end of the Domino pizza cycle. I legit, like, because I wasn't able to go anywhere. Like, where was I going to go? I didn't have a job. Raw vegan. I did raw vegan for probably 3 years, somewhere in that range. It was like 2011 to 2014. In that time, I had quite a few different jobs. And then I got this really good, high-paying bank job again. And that's when I bought the Vitamix, I bought a juicer, I bought everything. I really went full bore. I was losing weight like crazy. And then that had a huge falling out. I want to talk about that one. I really did have some real, like, strange, like, you can't even believe this is happening issues job-wise out there. So the furniture place hired me again. And when I went back there, they could not believe how much weight I had lost. But I was still losing weight. I was rebounding on my Bellicon at the time. And that was my only source of exercise, but I was losing like almost 2 pounds a day. So I had to add in avocados to kind of tail that back, because it was like 2 pounds a day, literally. And she's like, you look like the woman in charge of the shipping department came up to me. She's like, you look like you're losing like a pound a day. And she had this huge scale because she was running the shipping department and they were shipping out furniture. So sure enough, I would step on the scale every single day. I was losing a pound a day, every day. And when I didn't have the avocados in the diet, I was losing like 2 pounds a day. It was freaky. So 2014 comes around. I like 30 jobs into it from 2011 to 2014, because I kept getting these weird temp jobs. I finally got a job at the post office in 2013, but I was working locally and I still could do the raw vegan. I got a job, a much better job in 2014. Well, I thought it was better, but I was working like 12 to 14 hours a day. It was ridiculous. And I was having a hard time keeping up with the banana rotation. I was getting a lot of flack from my significant other because she got tired of the fruit flies that were buzzing everywhere, like everywhere. You could not go anywhere in that apartment without fruit flies. So I understood where she was coming from. So I backed off and I started adding in starches, but I did not back off the avocados as much as I probably should have. So I was making this soup. I think it was just raw tomatoes, raw red bell pepper, some spices, a half avocado, and a bunch of potatoes at night for dinner, because I really didn't feel like doing anything else. Or it was that, or I would do like one full raw day and one starch day. So I did add a little bit of weight back on. And I think the reason for that weight gain actually was just the pure stress from working that many hours, being away from the house that much time. I was barely getting to sleep because it was a hot mess. The sleep, the cortisol, everything was up. I didn't know about sugar water at the time, or if I did, I refused to do it. So I wasn't eating anywhere near as much as I should have, and I did gain a little bit of weight. And this continued on from 2014 into late 2015. November of 2015, it was when I met the chiropractor that basically saved my life at that time. I was limping around at this post office that I was at. It was a new post office because I had to be there at 4:00 in the morning. I was the one in charge of throwing the packages, and anybody who knows anything about the planet, if you're unless you're under a rock, there's packages being so much, And we had just gotten an Amazon contract, and I was throwing so many packages. But I didn't have like the best posture and everything because I don't know. So she comes up, one of my coworkers comes up to me and she's like, you really need some help. Like, I can tell you're dragging that leg around. She's like, why don't you go to my chiropractor? I'm like, that's woo-woo. My parents always said that was just nonsense. So I wouldn't go first. But I couldn't sit. I couldn't stand. I couldn't lay down. I mean, I couldn't even levitate. I was always in so much pain, even with that Bellicon that I had, which I hated the Bellicon. But the one saving grace about the Bellicon is you can kind of float. And it gives like this traction, and it really does help your spine. So that's the one selling feature for that. Even that wasn't helping. So I finally gave up. I went to the chiropractor. And he adjusted me, and we talked for a little while, and he wanted to get to know me. He was very Italian, talk. And it was fine because we had a lot of commonalities. But before I left, he's like, you got the back of a 75-year-old. Your inflammation's out of this world. And he's like, you're fat. Like, you're fat. You're obese. So he's like, and I think I was probably around 275 at this time, somewhere in that range. And he's like, what are you doing now for exercise? What's your diet? I said, well, I'm vegan. I'm not going to change that, but I lift. And I said, I don't know what it is. I could tell you every time that my weight gain happened, I was lifting. From 99 into 2000, when I lost all that weight, I was walking. In 2011, I probably should have mentioned this. In 2011 and 2012 or 13, I was doing couch to 5K. No lifting whatsoever. 2014, I added back in the lifting, gained weight. 2013 through 15, basically, I started lifting again. I gained weight. So this 2016 is basically when I got my shit together. He told me to buy a bike. I bought a bike. I had sold all the bikes I had previously owned because I used to actually really be into cycling. And I started my journey again. And I basically did raw till 4. I bought a 4-pound tub of Florida crystals, sugar, and I went through that one of those a week. It was just happened to be, he had 2 different offices. He had one in a gym, and he had one that was just his own office, but the one in the gym was right next to a nutrition, like a health store, and they had these 4-pound tubs. So I just kept buying those, and I was going through that every week. And I started cycling. I was riding about 150 miles a week. Stopped lifting altogether. Never really wanted to go back, and really never have to any real degree. And I lost so much weight, so much weight, in fact, that when I came back here, because I moved back to Cleveland in 2016, when I came back, man, this thing is like shedding like crazy. When I came back to Cleveland in 2017, my family, not my immediate, but my cousins and stuff, because I had to go to a wedding, they didn't even know who I was. I had lost so much weight that they didn't even recognize me. 2017, I'm like, I don't like riding out here at all. Like the East Coast, I love riding on the East Coast, but out here it's really like, it's not as good unless you're in certain areas. So I started lifting again, and my weight, and I didn't even think about that. I've never actually put 2 and 2 together, really. I did tell him, I mentioned that to him a little bit, but I've never really, like, when I look at this piece of paper that I have right here, hitting my hair, every single time I started lifting again, I gained weight. And so 2017, I came back here, I joined the gym again. I'm like, I really miss squatting and everything, but like, I really had to force myself. I really didn't like it, but I gained the weight back. I gained it back. I didn't even actually put 2 and 2 together just right now. And that sucks. That really sucked. So 2017, I came back here. I was still at the post office. I still technically am. And I had a 90-mile-a-day commute. And I had to be there at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I really wasn't eating in the morning. I basically had like oranges for break, and I had like a bag of rice for lunch. And then I would come home and force feed myself whatever I could find. It was vegan, but it was not great. And then like to the point where I would actually eat like an entire bag of like regular size Trader Joe's, like the regular bag of chips. So it was bad. That plus the lifting, I was always, it was bad. So I gained a lot of weight back. How much did I weigh? I have no idea. And then that kind of spiraled into me having foot issues and everything. And eventually I needed to have my ankle replaced. And that kind of brings us into shortly after that. That was 2020. Shortly after that started this channel. So what I've done since then, since the 2020, is Starch Solution 50-50 plate rice diet, raw till 4, and now I'm going to be doing a variation of the raw till 4 that I did in 2016. So let's just break it down. During my recovery from the surgery, I did Starch Solution. I lost about 15 pounds. And I thought I would even further that with the 50-50 plate, but I didn't. I actually gained weight. And then I did a potato reset, and I gained weight. So at this point in time, I was 262 pounds. When I was done with the Starch Solution, I was about 245 pounds. when I was done with 50-50 plate, the first time I was about 260, or the potato reset, I was 262. So I did the 50-50 plate again because I thought, oh, I'm like, I must have done this wrong. I must suck at this. So so I went and did the 50-50 plate again. I gained weight. I'm like, what the hell is this? So I did like an even more extreme version of it. I did like a 60-40 plate, or so, like 60% non-starchy, because I'm like reading this. I kept reading this maximum weight loss. I'm like, there's got to be something in its pages here. You know, like I'm like going through these pages. I'm missing something. So I kept going more and more extreme with it. And I went from 262 to 292. 30 pounds. 30. Oh, that was painful. I don't know why I let it happen, but I did. Because I'm smart in some ways. And that's actually why I started the channel. I'm like, this 50-50 plate is so bad. So bad. I mean, and talk about gas. Oh, talk about gas. If you want to run one of those Instagrams or TikToks where you're walking around the city, like lifting your leg and farting and seeing what people's reactions and posting these videos, 50-50 plate, I tell you what, you will have the biggest YouTube channel or Instagram channel ever doing that, if that's what your goal is. That was terrible. The gas, the constant bloating, always being hungry, the binges that came from it because I was always hungry. It was a hot mess. Hot mess. So shortly after that is when I did the rice diet. I think, was that year? It was. That was 2022. That was last year. So that's when I did the rice diet. I had a decent little following here on my channel. I got like 30 or 40 of us, and for the entire first 2 weeks of January, we did the rice diet, and I actually lost some weight. And then I decided I really wanted to try raw again, and I did raw for Lent, and I lost another 25 pounds, and I was down again in the 260 to 255, 260 range. I added rice back in. I was riding on my trainer the 30 minutes every single day, no matter what, every single day. Added rice back in, and it has just, you've seen me ever since. So at the end of this, what is my take from this? Cardiovascular activity is 100% needed if you are really somebody who struggles with this. I don't know what it does, because the amount of calories that you expend during a cardiovascular activity is nowhere near going to change your life around. But it has some effect to your body that is unseen. Like, you can't out-exercise a bad diet unless you're one of these people who is going to dedicate like 8 hours to exercise. So there's something that happens with exercise. Whether I'm pointing over here, I got a cellar sizer right here. I got bikes. You can walk, whatever it is. There's something that happens in that. And anybody, who's going to say, well, your thermodynamics or blah, 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 blah. What was an hour of walking, like 300 calories? I'm sorry. It's just, no, it's not happening. So what was the most absolutely effective diet of losing weight? Was raw, vegan, 100%. There is absolutely no comparison to the weight loss that I saw on raw vegan. It's no comparison whatsoever at all. None. My favorite was raw till 4. My favorite was 2016. So 2016, I was eating a bunch of fruit. I was eating one Cliff Bar a day. I was eating, I was having the naked drink. And then during watermelon season for lunch, I would have half a watermelon. During the regular part of the day, I would just have fruit. And then I would have mostly just potato fries that I made with a salad at night. That was basically what I did. That was by far my favorite diet because it gave me enough that I didn't have to be like so stringent about things. That was my favorite by far. 2016, I probably should have broken that down a little bit more, but yeah, it was fruit. And then later on when the weight was really coming off, I was probably around 240. This woman at work who was vegan, and Sandy, I don't know why, they just kept making me cookies. Like they were competing with each other, how many cookies they can make. So I was eating a lot of cookies, but the weight was still coming off like crazy. And then once I added the weightlifting back in, matter of fact, I went back to Philly because I had to pack up my stuff and come back. And the woman that was baking me those cookies, she ran into me at the chiropractor because she's the one that recommended the chiropractor. And she was so mad at me because she's like, you gained so much weight back. You put so much work into that. She's like, I don't even want to talk to you anymore. And she never did. She never talked to me again. So that was by far my favorite. It was the fruit all day. It was not many smoothies. Actually, I cut smoothies out altogether. I was just eating fruit. I was just eating apples, bananas, oranges, watermelon when it was in season, and mango when it was in season. And then dates sometimes. I'm not the biggest date fan. I'm not the biggest, like, I've had the same 11-pound box of dates in the fridge for like 3 months. So I don't need a ton of dates. And I was going through a 4-pound box of sugar a week, and I was going through 6 heads of lettuce, 6 head of romaine lettuce, one a day. And then I was going through 10 or 15 pounds of potatoes a week. How many bananas? I don't know. I think I was buying 1 case a week, if that. And then like 3 or 4 bags of apples and like 3 or 4 bags of oranges. And that was it. Yeah, that was my favorite. Keto's terrible. Keto's terrible. It's terrible. The side effects alone are so bad on keto. You smell all day. Your breath is terrible. You got to have gum on you at all times. You can't sleep. You start going bald, even if you're female. It's just, I don't know why people do it. So, the answer to your question, what was the most fast and effective way of losing weight that I have found? That was raw vegan. I mean, I'm serious, like 2 pounds a day. It was crazy. What was my favorite? Raw till 4, done the way I did it in 2016 and the way I'm going to be doing it now here in late 2023 going into, I can't believe it. I like spit on my own camera. Going into 2024. If that does not cut it, I am going to go back to raw vegan January like 2nd through whenever I get to a weight that I'm comfortable at. And that is the answer to the question. Hopefully it did you some good. Leave any comments, questions. What's your favorite diet down below? And that's my journey. Hopefully, watching this helps you some. Like the only times that I lost weight, like I said, was when there was some kind of cardiovascular activity involved. But the cardiovascular activity doesn't burn that many calories. So there's something else physiologically that happens with cardio that is more beneficial than the calorie expenditure. And that's it. Talk to you in the next one. Oh, don't forget to like and subscribe.